start this off, let's ask a question to you guys. How many of you work for an organization that uses a social collaboration tool or a social intranet tool? Please raise your hands now. That's not a lot of people right here. And is your tool successful? All right. So what I want to ask you is, what are, in your experiences, the key success factors when you implement a collaboration tool in a company?
So I've actually spent a lot of time looking at successful social business and collaboration projects and ones that weren't so successful, because we often learn a lot more than when we don't succeed, right? And a few patterns stand out. One, you have to have a collaborative culture. If you have workers that aren't willing to share what they're doing, you don't have the basic tools needed to succeed. And that requires education and change management and a real commitment from leadership in your organization. And when I talk to social business and collaboration projects all the time, I hear about how hard it is to get leadership involved and get them committed to making their efforts a success. And there is a direct correlation between leaders in a company supporting a collaboration environment and process, and even participating in it, and success.
So what if you do not have a management in place that understands what you just said? Is there any recipe when an organization is just not that far advanced? Are there people helping out, or what is the recipe then?
Well, I'd be interested to hear about your experiences in your company, but we see that grassroots adoption, bottom-up adoption can work, right? It's hard to do enterprise-wide that way, but we see departments doing this all the time. And this is the shadow IT phenomenon that we see more and more happening. A third of IT right now isn't even being controlled by the CIO anymore. We see that people are desperate for better tools and technologies. They see them on their phones and online, and they just want to use them. They bring them into their company. What do you guys see?
Well, it's exactly what you just said. The smaller the network sometimes is, the better it works, because people need to have a use case. So usually groups or teams that collaborate within a company are 10 people, maybe 15 people, but no more than that. And if a team like that, for example, goes to the internet and uses a tool that they really love and it's easy, then sometimes that grows like wildfire and kind of has a real positive user uptake. On the other hand, when you come from the top down, and you try to implement a social platform like company-wide with 5,000 people, you kind of hit press and then nothing happens.
Well, and this is what we really see is sometimes we have a top-down effort. If the workers are not bought into it, they didn't create it themselves, it's not for their needs, then adoption is tougher. We do see that when organizations let their departments experiment and find the right approach, that usually you're placing multiple bets and you're more likely to find the pattern, the way of working that works the best.
Exactly, there's a good saying, people help to support the world they created themselves. So that is the reason, I guess, why there's so much shadow IT coming from beneath. I mean, there's companies like Salesforce that used to put no software on their website to reach out to these people who are sick and tired of let's say, old school software that in the end is meant well, but doesn't work in the day-to-day business.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories is a large company. I'm based out of Washington, D.C. In the D.C. area, they had this big complex document management tool. You needed to fill out 17 fields to get something into it. Somebody set up MediaWiki. That's the wiki platform that runs Wikipedia. It's open source and free. Out of sheer desperation, they installed it on their own computer. Within 30 days, the whole department was using it. Within 30 more days, the whole side of the company was using it. And within 90 days, the entire company had switched over to a free piece of open source software to manage their wikis. And that's the kind of thing that we see happening more and more now.
What we read in the newspaper many times here in Germany too is, that there's companies that have this zero email policy. That means people kind of forbid internal emails. What's your experience on that? Is there any company yet that far. Are there any companies out there that have gotten rid of that email, let's call it problem, internally at least?
So we have seen email eradication efforts. I mean, large companies like IBM, they actually have deprecated email as a legacy technology. They say try and use a social network first. Only if you can't reach them that way, then use email. So I think even in the business world today, it's impossible to get rid of email, even though we spend so much of our time, 2 to 3 hours a day of our productivity is spent in email, and it's a major problem. Our large organizations like Atos Origin, 100,000 workers, they have succeeded largely in their email eradication program, right? So I just, in Paris at the Enterprise 2.0 Summit, I met them in the elevator and I go, hey, how's that working? And they go, our numbers, our email is at the lowest level we've ever had it, right? So it's happening. Siemens is doing it. But I think it's probably the wrong tactical focus just to say we want to eradicate email. It's really about what are your business goals and how we're going to improve reaching them.
I guess from our European German perspectives, like we are so structured, we love structure here, we love hierarchies in Germany, and we as a company, we produce basically social networking software for business purposes. We see that this approach of having folders and sub-hero hierarchies, that's much more important here than it is in the States, I guess. And if you, for example, compare German companies like the Deutsche Telekom to a Vodafone, you see our culture is reflected in this decentralized effort. And I guess that, you come from the other side of the ocean. Is that something that you would also say, yes, there's a difference between us and them?
Well, there's a couple of interesting differences. One, I've had people in Germany tell me multiple times, at first we didn't think social business was going to work very well here in Germany. You have something you crazy Americans were doing in the United States, but we want to know about it. Then they started using it, more and more German companies, and they realized that things like your labor laws make it easier for you to talk openly at work. And plus, it is kind of your culture to talk directly, very directly. And in the United States, when there is no guarantee of work whatsoever, people are a lot more cautious about what they say. It actually makes collaboration harder, and we have the whole political correctness thing. So that's a big cultural difference that I think is actually putting German companies, many of them, their efforts ahead of where our progress in the United States. So that's very interesting, I think.
That's true, yeah. So,
the other thing, and we talked about this off stage, is we have an American company called Valve. They're a very large company. Their software runs on more computers than Windows, to put it in perspective. And now they're not telling the story. They're trying to keep it a secret, but they're an entirely self-organizing company. They're a social business in every way, not just the software. Right? There are no titles. Everyone works on what they most want to work on that day. And if your peers think your work is good, you get to stay. And that has made them a leader in their industry. They're one of the top companies. They're a multi-billion-dollar firm that is entirely self-organizing. It takes 6 months, they say, for the average person who walks in the door to learn how to do their job because no one's going to tell them. Go find something you really want to do and do it.
I guess a key factor in this is motivation. Business psychologists have found out that autonomy in your work is much more motivating than, for example, pay. So social networks, the infrastructure that we provide as a company as Just Software, kind of help people to network and do their work on themselves. You don't really need bosses and C-level management anymore. If you have people that are empowered, basically, and engaged, you get much more efficiency and much more productivity out of them than if you have these processes and that old school type of doing business.
I think people are doing what they love most. They will deliver a higher performance.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.